I'm sure everybody has their top five moments of the 2022 calendar year for the Calgary Flames. Dylan and Chris are going to discuss theirs. Armchair GM podcast brought to you by the Hockey Podcast Network coming at you. Let's get into it.
Well, Chris, our last calendar year has been, I'd say, one of the most absolutely exciting and full of storylines years we've had as a fan base, and probably the Flames have had as an organization for
Yeah,
as long as I've been alive, being that I was born, just after they won the cup. So,
yeah, it's been a colorful year, that's for sure. There's been
100%.
highs and lows, but they all kind of coincide with top five storylines of the year for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's kick this off right away. We're just going to do a quick five top storylines slash moments of the year for each of us,
Yep.
see which ones overlap and stuff like that. You want to kick it off? What's your number five?
My number five is the acquisition of one Tyler Toffoli from Montreal last year,
Okay.
sometime mid February, I believe.
Valentine's Day, exactly.
Nice. See,
Yeah.
that's a better gift than my wife. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. No, it was a great moment. We needed somebody with some scoring power, and obviously he struggled through some of the playoffs and a bunch of last year, but in a top six role, he's really been a force, I think, so far in this season, the 22-23 season. um he's got a pile of goals. He's gelled well with the team, and he's looking not necessarily out of place on that top line.
I couldn't agree more. Now, I know we've talked about this before, but I don't think he's the best option for a top line. I think he's the best option we currently have 100%.
Yeah.
For that top line. And but I do agree with you. Like that's a hell of a moment. It's always nice when Brad actually goes out and gets, accurately identifies our biggest need and goes out and gets it.
Yeah.
And that was exactly what we needed at the time, and it was great. That's a
Yeah.
that's a good number five. That was going to be my honorable mention.
Yeah, and I agree. He's obviously not a true, first line winger. But you're right. He's the best option we have at the moment. I still think Brad needs to solidify that spot for sure. And having Tyler Toffoli on the second line, in that spot, I think would be great, right?
Oh yeah, no,
That would really,
absolutely. He's would be an absolutely awesome second liner. He's a great spot filler for what we have right now, and should, if we do go out and get somebody who's an actual top liner, he would be just fine for an injury, an injury spot filler as well.
yeah.
I have no problems with that, and he's shown some pretty good chemistry with the team.
He has. Yeah, he's shown some good chemistry with Lindholm, and Huberdeau, right? But I mean, not that Huberdeau's been playing on that line for the last couple of games. So has it been 4 games now, 5 games?
Yeah.
So it just kind of proves that he's gelling well with the team, because Dubé's been up on that line, so clearly he's done well. Yeah. Russ has been there for a while, or at the beginning of the year, anyways.
Yeah.
But Lindholm, obviously being our clear cut number one center on this team.
Yep.
I think the two of them have done well together. So that's good news, right? We need pairs or trios that can really gel well together and put, obviously put the puck in the net. That's the name of the game. You're not winning games if you're not scoring goals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My number 5 best storyline of this year would be Dubé, who's, spent the last few years kind of in between the fourth, third, and second lines.
Mhm.
And as you know very well, I've been kind of calling that he's going to be a breakout star for,
Yeah.
I don't know, 3 years.
Yeah.
But finally, he's kind of breaking out, and he's proving, he's playing on the first line right now, the quote unquote first line right now. But he's proving to me that he's a second line, top 6 type of guy. I don't think he's a long-term solution for the first line, but I do think that he's a great top 6 type of guy.
Yeah.
With 9 points in his last 10 games. Not all of those have come playing on the top, quote unquote top line, but it's been great, and he's shown great chemistry. And I don't think he's ever like whined about being thrown around on the bottom lines or even scratched or anything like that. Like, at least in the media, he's
Mhm.
been really good. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you the props on that. You've been talking about Dubé for a couple of years, being somebody to look out for, and of course, I've been the one denying things that you've said. I've always considered him from his career leading up to this season, a very serviceable third line player, which I have no problem with. But
Especially at his cap hit.
that's right, and not to dump on Dubé. I just didn't see him playing at the level that he has been this year.
Yeah.
Because I will give that credit. He's really played well this year in comparison, especially to his years leading up. I didn't see him doing as well as he was or has been on the second line, and then to be able to get that promotion to the first line is, I mean, that's good on him, right? That just shows great work ethic and buying into a coach's system that appears to be about playing an entire length of ice game and
Great
and
forecheck.
great for, yeah, absolutely. Like
That's his biggest strength.
he's been very tenacious this year, and it's been refreshing to see. I'll give him all the credit in the world for doing what he has been so far this year. I hope he continues to do it.
I couldn't agree more. I think one thing that we've both said for a few years is he's always been really fast with the puck, and this year he's being fast without the puck.
That's always been
Um,
my biggest thing. That's because I always
yeah,
hear everybody say how fast he is, but he didn't have the puck very often before. And so I didn't really find him to be fast. I found him to be late to the puck a lot, late to the corners, late, so having him actually look quick with both with the puck and without the puck, it's been really good. And
yeah,
you know what? He doesn't give up on a play, which I absolutely love. You know me. I'm old time when it comes to my hockey. I'm old time when it comes to life.
yeah.
Um, he doesn't give up on a play. He's very tough in there. He's not a huge guy. He's not a big guy at all, but he's not as easily pushed around this year as he was in years previous.
Agreed.
That is absolutely the separation that I put between him and Mangiapane. Right? He
Yeah,
can
me too.
stay on his feet.
Mangiapane's still really easily pushed around.
Yeah, absolutely. My daughter would push him around. My daughter is quite tough, but
I was gonna say,
yeah, I mean, she pushes me around, but I'm not getting paid $5.8 million to stay on
push
my
your
feet.
daughter around. I'd fucking hope not.
Yeah, right. You and I both.
um, um, and he's only 11 points off of his career high, which was last year.
Yeah,
Um, now he's 10 goals off of his career high, but I see him reaching that. And he's only 1 assist off of his career high. If he stays in the top 6, I don't see a world in which he doesn't surpass his career high, which is 32 points.
yeah, agreed.
Barring injury.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely.
Um, what's your number four?
My number four, I'm going to call it a saga, if you will, the Kadri slash Monahan saga. Okay. Everybody knew that Monahan was likely going to be the odd man out when it came to needing cap space to sign all our players that we acquired, as well as get, a player such as Kadri to not replace Kachuk, but to at least fill a need, right?
Yeah.
So in order to sign Kadri, we needed to get rid of Monahan, which, as a fan base, we hate to lose him. He did some great things for the organization, and is a superhuman being. But NHL is a business, so unfortunately, Monahan was the odd man out. We were able to use the first round pick that we picked up in the Kachuk trade, just so as that Montreal be willing to eat up that cap, because it was a big hit, right, for somebody
Yeah.
that ultimately ended up playing third, fourth line minutes at the end of his tenure here in Calgary. So we traded him off. We signed our a second line center who quite frankly he's done well. He's had his moments where it's been frustrating to watch. There's a couple of aspects of his game that I'm not a huge fan of, but that's here nor there.
Every player does, pretty
That's
much.
right. Absolutely.
I mean, every player that's not Elias Lindholm and Chris Tanev.
Right. So he comes in, we sign him to a big contract, more than I would like, but you have to spend money to attract these players, right?
Mhm.
So that's my number four, the saga, if you will, right?
That-
Getting rid of a fan favorite to bring in potentially another fan favorite.
Yeah, I totally I overlooked that one. I've never been a huge fan of Kadri.
Mhm.
Um, you know, before last year, his playoff iffiness, if that's an appropriate word for that.
He had a
Um,
label. He had a label for his style of play or his antics during the playoffs, for sure.
mhm. And to cross that line in the playoffs during his career is kind of weird.
Yeah.
I think he kind of got past that last year, but my biggest thing was the number,
Mhm.
and the term. As far as 7 times 7, I think that's entirely way too much. But like you said, you got to spend, and you got to extend the contract in order to get those
Yeah,
guys to come. And the first rounder was rough for Monahan, to get rid of Monahan.
for
But
sure.
if you think about it, Monahan at his point in his career and a first for Kadri, if you were to do that straight across, I don't think it would be like, if it was a trade, I don't
Mhm.
think that would be horribly um frowned upon.
No, no, I
And
agree.
Kadri seems to be a good person as well.
He
At
he
least it seems.
absolutely does. And I find Kadri's style of play more suited to a Daryl Sutter system.
Than Monahan, 100%,
Yeah, than
without a
Monahan.
doubt.
And that's shown really when you look at the
Mhm.
decline of the last 2 years of Monahan. Obviously, a lot of that had
Injuries.
to do with injury, and I get that. But even when he was quote unquote healthy or at least playing, he wasn't able to keep his first line minutes, nor even acquire second line. He instantly went from first to third, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of telling for a system. When you bring in a coach, he wins coach of the year. Yeah, those changes are going to happen. I would have been comfortable with Kadri at the dollar amount. I don't have an issue with the term. Obviously, I do. A 7 times 4 or 7 times 5 would have been great for me.
Mhm.
But
I would have even been fine with a little bit more
yeah,
money if it was less term.
for sure, absolutely.
Um, I just think that the combination of the 7 and the 7 is a little bit much.
Mhm.
But again, you got to do that in order to get guys to come to Calgary,
Yeah,
and to stay, right. It is what it is. And honestly, I think Tree Living also kind of knew that if the next 2-3 years don't work, he's out.
Right.
And then it doesn't matter to him, right?
That's right.
And that's the same thing with a bunch of the stuff that he did this summer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously Brad's hand was forced in a lot of what happened this summer.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to say forced, I guess, but he should have seen at least one of them coming, or at least
Absolutely.
have dealt with it a year sooner,
Or
and
both.
then or both. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what happened through the season last year, or even slightly into the summer, but clearly there was something awry when it came to a couple of players. But those signs should have been noticed sooner, and we could have moved on with great assets. I mean, we did pretty good with the Kachuk situation. Obviously, the Johnny situation was a complete blunder
Yeah.
on every aspect of it.
And they do, yeah. I mean, it's hard to trade, your top players when everyone is, flying going into the playoffs and that type of stuff. But
Stuff, yeah,
also
it's
asset management is important. And honestly, um,
yeah,
once
it,
somebody says I will not negotiate the uh during the season,
mhm.
if you don't at least try to negotiate during the season a couple times throughout, um
Yeah,
that's kind of your own mistake. I don't know if he did or didn't, but when the trade deadline comes around and he hasn't signed,
yeah,
that's on Brad.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're 99.9% of the time you're not negotiating with the player anyways. Let them play hockey. Negotiate with the agent, and the agent's going to be able to tell you if things are not going to happen, right?
Mhm.
And so I agree. If we're not able to trade him at the deadline because you think there's going to be something happening, which I understand with when it comes to that. And that's actually going to get into my number three. When we had three players, or two of those players that were on the top line and absolutely flying, were leading the Pacific. Obviously, you're not a seller at that point,
No.
right? So I understand not doing it at the deadline. I get it, but as soon as the season ended, those conversations should have been very blunt,
Mhm.
extremely blunt. If it's not going to happen, fine, move it along, trade them,
Yeah.
right?
Don't
Trade
don't
trade
don't
them.
walk on eggshells. Fucking
That
do
that
something about it. Yeah.
that's right. That's right. Be blunt, and if it's not going to happen, trade him at the draft. Done.
Okay.
But yeah, so
No,
that's
I agree.
that's that's my number four. What's your favorite on the four?
My number four is the emergence of Rasmus Anderson, and I think it started a little bit before the 2022 calendar started.
Mhm.
Not much before, but he's he had that really bad year. What was it, 2020, 2021 in the shortened season.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't even think it was really, really bad. I just think it wasn't as good as we were expecting. Um, in his how can I say it? Like in the progression of his career.
Yeah.
Um, he didn't take that step forward that a lot of people were thinking, and I'm not sure, but I think that's the year he signed his um the year after, I guess, he signed his extension.
Yeah.
So, you expect a guy to take a step forward. Um, but then he did take a step, like a huge step forward last year, and he's continued that into this season. Throughout the 2022 calendar, he's really stepped up,
Mhm.
whether it be time on ice. His time on ice has skyrocketed. When Daryl Sutter trusts a defenseman to put him out that much,
Yeah. In
that's
every
a
situation.
great thing. In every situation, shorthanded,
Yeah.
power play, 5-on-5, whatever, other teams' best players, whatever. I do think he should shoot more, but on the power play specifically. But that's really the only thing I think he needs to do. Really,
Yeah.
he's already tied his career high in goals with only 38 games this year,
Yeah.
which is 5, right? So if he continues this on, he'll have, I don't know, 12, 13 goals. Which is great for a defenseman of his caliber.
Yeah.
And he's well over halfway to his career high in points, which is 50, and he's at 27 with not even at the halfway mark of the season.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing is, again, that he's being trusted, and that he's doing well 5-on-5. Like, I think he had a stumble at the beginning of the season 5-on-5, but ever since then he's really stepped up.
Yeah. Yeah, he really has. And I agree with you. It's not that he took a step back or anything like that in that 1 year. It's just that he didn't progress forward to have the comfort as him on your number one pairing, right?
Absolutely. And the team sucked. Like, the team was really fucking bad that year.
Yeah.
And Jeff Ward was Jeff Ward.
Right. Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of things that needed to happen during that season that didn't. Yeah. Last year he was phenomenal, and he's even better this year so far. He's been playing great. I 100% feel comfortable with him on the top pairing, and barring something drastic, I can see him being an assistant as well as potentially being in the conversation for captain.
He doesn't get a lot of love for that, but I agree. Go ahead and say what you're saying.
But with the minutes that he garners, he is trusted in every situation. Power play, penalty kill, 5-on-5. His overtime presence this year has been phenomenal.
Even his shootout presence,
and now he's a shootout guy. Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
Right. There's no situation that you don't feel comfortable with having Rasmus out on the ice.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%. That's a great pick.
And I also want to put out there that he's physical, which is great, or he can be physical. He's also pretty good with the stick, but he's like, for some reason, even with Lucic on the second line, he is like the only player in the top half of our lineup that reacts to a bad hit against one of our players or anything like that. And he reacts well, I think, like, as far as not crossing the line, but also getting in the other guy's face and pushing them away, pushing them around, but not like cross-checking them and getting a penalty for it.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the reasons why I feel like he should get more love in the conversation for becoming a captain. He really shows his leadership on ice in situations like that. And you're right. He doesn't go out of his way to be an ass. He just gets in their face, letting them know that's not kosher and that shit's not going to fly. And then he skates away. Right. Like, that's what you want from your people wearing a letter, right?
Absolutely.
So it's that they're not going to get you into a situation where they're going to take stupid penalties, but they're also going to be in a situation where they're going to let the other team know that what they've done is not going to happen again.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah. All right, what's your number 3?
My number 3, I kind of alluded to it with my last comment there. Or my number 4, having an entire top line scoring 40 goals is pretty huge in a season.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if it's sustainable again for Elias. I certainly hope it is. It's not looking like it's going to be this year, obviously, but that was really cool. Having the three of them, being Elias, Matthew, and Johnny, gathering 40 goals each in a season. That was pretty impressive, right? Yeah. They were unbelievable as a line. As far as I'm concerned, the top line in the NHL. Obviously, now we have more spread out scoring. We could use some more, obviously, but having an entire team that can put the puck in the net is, I think, vastly superior to relying on one line. So
It isn't nearly as exciting, I
that's
think,
right.
which is one of the reasons why a lot of people um, don't think this team is as good, or are
Yeah.
frustrated by Huberdeau, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that that's part of that, is that obviously it's like insanely exciting when the same dynamic players are just running roughshod through the league,
100%.
like they were.
Yeah, I agree. As a fan, you kind of want those storylines and those moments. I personally would rather have four lines I could score,
Me too.
but it really is fun to watch.
And
I
don't get me wrong, I loved what was happening last year too.
mhm.
I just think it's better to have more goals out of Richie and Dubé and other the defensemen and other things that are happening, right?
Yeah, agreed, 100%. What's your number three?
Well, real quick, Lindholm, he's only at 12 goals this year, so he's on pace for more like 20, 25, something like that. But they've started getting better
Yeah,
um lately, so I feel like that could get
and
that could boost up, but I don't think 40's really in the cards. But he is, you know, on pace to get pretty close to the points.
yeah,
And we
and-
talk about it all the time. Assists, you can't have a goal without you can't have an assist without a goal happening. So
yeah,
they're just as important.
yeah, absolutely. And in Lindholm's defense, he did start the season with two new line mates, so obviously you're not going to get the same production out of him for a number of games, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
people put a mark on it, whether it be 10 games, whether it be 20 games, whether it be 30 games. Well, now we're just over the 30 game mark. I certainly don't have an issue with Lindholm's game, and he's
No,
starting
no,
to he's starting to pick up those points now. Him and Toffoli have looked good together, especially over the last 20 games. So
no.
I think those points are going to come, and I think he'll surpass that assist marker.
Agreed. I think it'll be good. Oh, he's only a +1 this year.
Ooh, well, gee, that's something I didn't put on my list, which is interesting because it's a stat that I don't really follow, I guess.
No, no, me neither. But still, you look at elite two-way centers, and you're not you
Yeah,
don't expect that.
true.
Um, but that's going to improve this year. I mean, like you said, the whole team's getting better. There's more chemistry, and I
Do
mean,
you do you think that marker could be tarnished based on the start of the season with our number one goalie having a very serious issue with the first couple of shots
I
when
couldn't agree more. Yep.
when they're coming on or starting the game? I think that doesn't help that stat.
No, it absolutely doesn't. And I agree with that. Um, Moving on, my number three here is the signing of Jonathan Huberdeau, and this isn't so much um like it wasn't so much as exciting to me because I thought it was going to happen. I think it was kind of more relieving to me, as far as we can now put to bed this people don't want to sign in Calgary.
Mhm.
This, for some reason, people thinking that he was going to go to Montreal, like Montreal isn't rebuilding. And like every other fan was pretty much spamming like, oh, he's never going to sign here, and well, and it was just nice to end
Mhm.
that whole thing. um and also kind of how it happened, as far as the whole taking, Brad taking him out to dinner in Montreal, I believe, and then it
They
being
went to Boston Pizza, right?
no, but that's part of the reason why I like this quote unquote storyline so much, is because it created that buzz, and it created that
Yeah.
the fan interaction and the media interaction about, did they go to Boston Pizza? Because for those of you who don't know, Tree Living's dad owns Boston Pizza. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I and Is the number a little too much? Maybe, but I think that that it's going to work out just fine for us.
I agree with you 100%. Yes, is the number too much? I've
If
been a
it is,
fan.
it's not that much too much.
Yeah, I've been a fan of the Flames since 1980. So obviously my go-to is players are paid too much, right?
Well, yeah,
It is what it is, right?
all players are, in my
All
opinion, too.
that's
But
right, all players. So yes, is it too much in my opinion? Sure. Is it what was needed to sign an elite forward, an elite playmaker? Absolutely, that's what was required.
yeah,
After the trade, the big story was how blindsided Huberdeau was in the whole situation. He was in the middle of contract negotiations or extensions.
no,
Um,
he wasn't.
well, he was supposed to be, but they
He
weren't
wanted to
talking.
be. He was
Yeah,
expecting that phone call, but he never
that's
got
right.
it.
Yeah,
That's part of the reason. That's part of what pissed him off so much.
yeah. The call that he got was that he was traded on a Friday
Hmm.
night at
Hmm.
at would have been 11 o'clock his time, because I'm pretty sure that trade came down at like 8:45 on that Friday night,
Yeah, it was late.
Mountain Time. Yeah. So, you know, the team that he had played with for his career basically just dumped him without
Yeah.
notice, which is just, I think it's a poor way to deal with what I would call a franchise player.
Hmm.
So when he
No, I agree too. Like, at least talk to them about it.
at least talk to them, that's right. Hey, just so you know, here's where we're at, whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
So he gets traded
And
to
that was
Calgary,
like a
and then
couple days after his no trade clause expired.
that's right.
Like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of reasons for that, to just be ignorant towards somebody
yeah.
that gave a lot to a franchise, right?
And
So
I
then
think that that's part of what gave the fan base so much juice about him not wanting to sign or whatever, because
yeah,
he was upset and he was outwardly upset with towards the media about how Zito dealt with it. And I think people thought that that was a sign that he didn't want to be in Calgary, not a sign that he was upset with Florida.
well, that's right. Both him and Uyghur were noticeably upset about the whole situation. So
Mhm.
when Huberdeau comes to Canada, or back home to the Montreal area, and Brad reaches out to him, takes him out for dinner. I mean, I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation,
Me too.
but clearly something Brad said made sense.
A fly on the pizza. Sorry.
A fly, yeah. Um, yeah. So I mean, it would have been a really interesting conversation to be able to overhear. So, I'm not going to lie, I thought, just based on what I saw of him in the media, and the reports and everything surrounding. Plus, we have this mantra in Calgary where we have a hard time signing elite players.
Mhm.
I was surprised by the contract. I was honestly surprised that he was willing to go that long term before even having a practice with what everybody says is the most hard-nosed coach in the league.
Mhm.
And obviously Huberdeau has had pretty much free reign to do whatever the hell he wanted to do in Florida, right?
Mhm.
Not saying that he was a rogue player or anything like that. It's not what I'm alluding to. But when you have elite players and coaching staff that isn't elite, we'll say top notch, then
And also a division and conference that are a lot more um offensively, have more offensive prowess, let's say.
that's right. And to sign in a city that, well, let's face it, annually will have about 3 to 4 feet more snow than what he's used to.
And it's fucking cold and windy. I mean, it's probably windy in Florida too, but
I mean, less hurricanes here, so there's that.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Way less,
Hmm.
like 100% less.
Yeah.
But we have Chinooks. We have Chinooks here in Calgary, and you know what? That's a bonus opposed to what they offer up 3 hours north of here.
Yeah. I think part of why I liked that that storyline so much was that it's not very often we get storylines that are negative that end in Calgary. And
That's
I
right.
feel like the people, for the most part, the people don't want to sign here, or at least Huberto doesn't want to sign here or play here or whatever, ended there.
That's right.
And that doesn't happen often. Even when things, a storyline should end, people
Yeah.
will continue on with it.
Yeah.
And I think that as a
Well,
person who spends way too much time on the internet, it was just kind of relieving.
yeah, absolutely. It shut a lot of people up.
Yeah.
And just put it to bed, put it to rest. Right.
Agreed.
That's good.
What's your number two?
My number two, oddly enough, has to do with Huberdeau as well. But it's the Matthew Tkachuk deciding that he did not want to be a Flame. Period. Kind of full
Oh,
stop. Right.
that was your okay.
That is my number two.
Just that part of it.
Well, and then Brad being able to turn it into what I think is a pretty reasonable return, a really reasonable return.
Okay. So we can talk about both of our number twos at the same time then, because my number
Good.
two is the trade.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the whole trade, right? So we got Huberdeau, which we've already discussed. We got Uyghur, who
we will discuss momentarily.
Yeah, absolutely. Got that first round pick that we ended up trading to Montreal to unload Monahan's cap hit, so that we could sign what my fourth pick was. Plus a very serviceable center who's playing in the AHL right now, and I hope that at some point he can be a difference maker somewhere. I think it was a really good return given the situation. Granted, I from what I understand, Matthew was very adamant that he wanted to go to Florida and nowhere else.
Yeah.
So, and that's fine.
I think he had a couple on his list, but from what I hear, and I wonder how much Bennett had to do with it because they're like best buddies.
Yeah,
but
they're good friends. Yeah.
As far as I know, that was his number one spot. And I kind of feel like part of that was probably that he wasn't expecting Huberdeau to be in the trade and that he wanted to play with Huberdeau.
Agreed.
But
agreed. And if that's the case, great. Fuck you, Matt.
Well, they're not in the playoffs, so there's that. So far.
That's a shame.
Remember my hot take at the beginning of the year? Florida misses the playoffs.
I do. And remember I gave you
a whole bunch of shit for it. We're still not there yet, but yeah.
Yeah. No, but so far you're right. Cheers for that. Well done.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah, I think given the entire situation that we had this summer, the trade was necessary to continue to have even a fan base in Calgary, I believe, or at least a large chunk of it, because we had already lost Johnny.
True.
And then we were told that Tkachuk was not going to sign. So it was a lot of doom and gloom in August, right?
I think it's the most grim I can remember the fan base being for that. What was it, like week and a half or whatever?
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks worth. I was on vacation for all of that, and I'm not going to lie, it ruined a bit of my vacation, right? Because it was depressing. Like I said, these two players were part of our 40 goal club. And it was like, what the fuck just happened?
And to me, it's amazing that, there's got to be something that happened within the organization or the dressing room or something, because it just doesn't make sense to have that much success for two players and for both of them to be offered so much money and turn it down. Just it makes no sense to me, but it is what it is. Like I do understand, being closer to home or being where it's warmer or less taxes, no taxes, whatever. I get all that, but still, it's less like expecting that much success in your next place with no implemented chemistry already is pretty tough.
It is. I mean, there's a couple of other factors that I think came into play. I mean, you have a situation where the world has been going through a pandemic, and
Mhm.
and travel is an issue. Um, you know,
Johnny's dad.
Johnny's dad. That's right. Also with Johnny, you have his dad that flat out said that Brad's first offer mid-season last year was an insult. So I
Hmm.
can only imagine how what we would consider to be a franchise player and how you want to sign them long term and entice them to stay by insulting them in your first offer. I don't know what that number was. They won't say what that number was, but
I don't blame him.
I'm assuming it's like 7.5, right?
Yeah, and I mean he was coming off a rough previous year, but also, um, you know
Yeah,
what he's capable of, whether he had an off year or not. You know what he's capable of,
yeah.
and it's
You know
kind of
what? I wish all of our players had a rough year, i.e., just slightly under a point per game. That would be amazing.
mhm, right.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah.
Um,
So the trade has got to be the honorable number two,
Me
right?
too. And the less talked about, I know you brought it up earlier, but the less talked about piece of that trade is Cole Schwint, um, who is playing behind Connor's area right now.
Hmm.
And Connor's area's line is popping off absolutely crazy. And somehow the second line center in that uh on that team is Cole Schwint, and he's still got 20 points in 27 games, only
Yeah,
6 penalty minutes. Um,
that's impressive.
so
'Cause he's a bigger player, right? Was he about? Wasn't he 6'1"?
6'2".
Is he 6'2"?
6'2", 83 kilograms, 182.
182. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good, right? I mean, you figure because I know he's a physical player, right?
Yeah.
Not like a physical force, but he's a physical player. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised that the penalty minutes are that low.
Me too. It makes sense with having less, like in theory, less uh time on ice with not being
Sure,
a top line player.
I
Um,
agree.
there's a lot of other AHL teams where he would be the top line center,
I
in my opinion. But
I feel like potentially a reason for the lower number of penalty minutes potentially could be the fact that he's smart with his stick. He's not doing stick infraction like
I I hope
high
so.
high stick and hooking and slashing, things like that.
Have you
Tripping.
watched many Wranglers
I've
games this
watched
year?
a couple of them. I actually have not got to the dome yet for a Wrangler game, and I don't know why.
Yeah. Did you notice the ones? Did you notice him in the games that you
Yeah,
played or that
I
you
did.
watched?
I
Sorry.
did, and that's why I brought up the fact that he's a physical player.
Yeah.
He does like to muck it up, in the boards or on the boards in the corners, that sort of thing. So
Okay.
I do, and that's how I like my centers, right?
Absolutely.
Tenacious
Um,
and tough.
and I feel like, oh, he's playing right wing right now. Interesting. But I do think that he's not the type of prospect that you expect to be a top six player.
Mhm.
I feel like he's the type of prospect that would be fine to even call up right now if you needed a fourth line center. But I feel like he's kind of a ceiling third line center, which you still need. You still need third line players.
Yeah,
So that's fine. Um,
I I agree. I feel like if something happened with an injury and we
mhm.
had to move Sahorna up, I think Schwinn would be a reasonable piece to bring in for the fourth line.
Yeah, I agree.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk Uyghur real quick. I really enjoy watching Uyghur. I
Mhm.
think he's been unlucky to not get the points. He scored his first goal last game, which was a game-winning goal, which is huge.
Yep.
But I also don't give a fuck about his points.
I don't give a fuck about his points either.
Yeah.
He's really come along. I feel, especially learning from Tana. I find his defensive game has improved immensely since the beginning of the season.
I couldn't agree more.
He's great with a stick.
very good with the stick.
There's been a few plays where he reminded me of TJ Brody when it comes to the way he's able to wrangle the puck away from somebody without even touching them.
Wrangle, I like that.
Right. He's also a physical player. Right? He's tough, and he's got this mean streak in him, which sometimes gets him into trouble as far as penalties, but that's okay.
That's fine. No different than Kadri.
That's right. I really don't have an issue with how Uyghur has played. I mean, yes, would I like to see more points from him? Sure. I'd rather his points come from assists than goals, because that means that he's staying on the blue line and playing a defensive role.
Offensively, I really like his stretch pass. I know we've talked Uyghur lots on the pod before, but I really like his stretch pass. That's one of the things that reminds me of Brody about him. He's really good at it, and I feel like a lot of goals and stuff come from a stretch pass and then a couple of passes, so he doesn't get a point from that.
Yeah, I
don't care.
No,
I think he's been fine, and I think another thing we've talked about in the past is Tanev only has so long left, and I don't think we have anybody currently in the system besides Uyghur who is and I don't even think he's a lot like Tanev, but I think he's the only guy we have who's like a natural second pair type of we don't have any other shutdown guys, and I feel like he could be a shutdown guy. He has the tools.
He's steady. Right? He's steady and consistent, which I love with my defenseman. Just play defense. And and I think he's very good at it.
And if Tanev gets hurt, I feel a lot more comfortable knowing we have Uyghur.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you don't want to break up that top line of Noah and Rasmus, right? You want to keep them going and doing what they're doing or what they do best. And so to have Uyghur as a stable spot or a staple, if you will, on that second pairing is needed. Absolutely needed.
I couldn't agree more. And with his first goal being a game winner, and even though it wasn't like a super pretty goal or anything, it was just a smart get the puck on net play.
Right.
I would be willing to bet that he
shoots more.
Well, that he's got more goals coming, that That's he's got more points coming, that his offensive confidence starts coming.
That's right. He created a chip in the dam, and that dam's about to break, right?
That's how it happens sometimes. Guys just need a door to open, and sometimes that takes a long time.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, if he gets 5 goals, 6 goals this season, great. If he gets 3 goals this season, also great, as long as his defense is good.
Couldn't agree more. We should take a break and talk about DraftKings a little bit before we get to our number one.
Our number one, if you want to hear it, because it's really big, is coming up in mere moments.
It's also little if you think about it.
Zinger.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Okay. Hockey fans, light the lamp this winter at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers can bet just $5 pregame moneyline on any NHL team to win their game. Get $150 in free bets if they do. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age, some restrictions apply. See the show notes for details.
Well, Chris, as a big surprise to absolutely no one, our both of our biggest moments and storylines of the 2022 calendar year is
Johnny Gaudreau scores from behind the net to catapult the Flames into the second round of the playoffs.
in overtime of Game 7, which somehow didn't put to bed the storyline that Johnny Gaudreau doesn't produce in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Even though he very much did. I never got that storyline, but
and I know it wasn't from behind the net, but it might as well have been.
It was close enough. It was so
was
far away,
like 4
and it
inches
was
from the
basically
goal line.
on the line.
Yeah.
I know that it kind of hurts to think about now in hindsight because he's no longer part of the team, but I don't think I'm going to forget, and if I do, it's going to be a long, long time, exactly how that's honestly made me feel, right? Like that when that goal went in and he scored. One thing I really appreciated is that Rick Ball stopped talking.
Yeah.
And let the roar of the dome happen. And I sat back on my couch and like I straight up just sat there for, I don't know, 3-4 minutes. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't look at my phone. I couldn't do anything. I just fucking sat there and like exhaled. It was such a relieving feeling. And it was great.
I ended up with scars on my hand and had to repair my ceiling from jumping out of my seat. It was such an incredible moment. It's one of those moments, and obviously as a Flames fan, we'll feel it more so than anybody else. I understand that, but it's a where were you when type moment.
Oh,
as far as I'm
100%.
concerned.
I just want to
such
bring
an
up
unbelievable goal. It was unreal.
How amazing it is that you hit your roof, considering you're like 4'8".
Yeah, I mean that's how high I jumped. My ceiling's only 6 feet here, so it's fine. But
Yeah,
I only had to jump a couple of inches once you reach up with your arms. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
quick
it was
little chirp,
unreal.
anyways.
Yeah, 4'8", not bad.
Yeah. Maybe a little taller.
My mom said I'm not big, or I'm not fat, I'm big boned, right?
Yeah,
Or something like that.
Yeah. I still wouldn't want to get in the tilt with you. Just yeah. I mean, I think a large portion of the fan base had the same kind of react or one of the reactions that we had. It was huge in the media. It was huge for the team. It was huge for the player, and I think a lot of people, myself included, thought that him becoming that hero for that game was going to significantly help our chances of re-signing him.
Yeah,
I certainly thought that. I was dead wrong, obviously, but I certainly thought that.
Yeah, and it's really funny when you look at our fan base and how much they've always shit on Johnny for not being a playoff player. But in the same breath, almost every single one of those people absolutely love Tkachuk for being a playoff style player. And if you look at point production and what they actually accomplish on the ice, I know which one I prefer.
Yeah. And I think long term, I think Tkachuk will become a really good playoff player because he has the tools. He just forgets that he has the tools once he hits the playoff.
He just forgets how to play hockey and thinks that because he
chasing John Klingberg is the right thing to do.
Yeah, because he knows he can play a physical style game. He tries to take it to this extra level, thinking that that's what playoff hockey is. I'm surprised that Keith hasn't kicked his ass for it, to be honest with you, because he's done it a few times. But you would think by now that Keith'd be like, you know what, fucking knock it off, because that's not what playoff hockey is. You're still there to win games.
Like,
right? Well, maybe Daryl did, and that's why he didn't want to stay.
Maybe.
Who knows, right?
fucking Markstrom should have kicked his ass for that. Fuck, the whole team should have kicked his ass for that. Like,
Yeah.
I get being upset that something happened in one game, but to continuously
Yeah.
chase the same
Wasn't that
player and
like
take
game
stupid
one?
penalties over it for like several games afterwards,
Yeah, it was asinine.
that
It was the
that
worst
is the
playoff
reason.
performance I've ever seen from a top line player.
Yeah,
Like, it was just ridiculous.
exactly. And to me, that is just as much of a reason as Ottinger was for that series
Going 7 games.
being, yeah, that series had no business going past 5 games.
Nope.
And between Kachuk's stupid penalties and him not being in the position he should have been in to score or whatever, and Ottinger taking a lot of shots directly to his to the middle of his chest.
Check out this
Um,
shirt, by the way.
that's a great shirt. That's the one I was talking about last episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And as well as, didn't he hurt his hand?
Fighting. Yep.
Well, not even fighting. Like Klingberg's on the ground and he's punching his helmet.
Yep.
Like, no, there's no fight there. It's just stupidity.
Yeah.
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 No, just every aspect of it. So that being said, we're taking away from the greatest moment of the 2022 season in Johnny Gaudreau's goal.
That, I think that's the best Flames moment since 2004. Yep. And it's the second best Flames moment since I was born in 1989, just after the Cup.
Fucking kids. I agree. Since 2004, the greatest moment. What? Just real quick, I'm wondering if you can tell me if there's any. I know I have 2 greatest moments from 04 to Johnny's. Do you have any?
Like, ever since the 2004 Cup run?
Yeah. So since 2004, what was your greatest moment, or say 2 greatest moments before the Johnny Gaudreau goal? To put you on the spot.
One of mine is the Jerome Iginla retirement ceremony, honestly.
Interesting. Okay.
The collection of players that were there and the stories that were told.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I know that that's not like super hockey, like not on ice hockey related, even though it was technically on the ice, but you know what I mean.
Okay.
Number 2, well, I don't know if that's number 1 or number 2. That was just the first one that came to mind. Staging.
Was that goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. That 100%.
For those of you that don't know, was it the day after? Was it his first game back?
It was his first game back. Yeah, it was a couple days after, I believe.
So Staging, Matt Staging, and his wife, I can't remember his wife's name right now, but they lost a baby. And he took some time off for it. And then his first game back as a 4th line center, he scores a huge goal. I can't remember if it was a game winner or not, but it was a huge goal. You can hear it in the intro to Sportsnet 960's Flames Talk show. You can hear it in any, or watch it in any top 10 moments, top 5 moments of Flames in the last however long. But that would definitely be one of my top 2, as well as the Iginla thing. What about you?
So my top 2 was, number 1 was absolutely going to be that Staging goal. That was incredible. Number 2 for me was watching Michael Ferland in the 2015 playoffs against Vancouver.
Yeah, no, he dominated that series, and that's a really good show, because that was a lot of fun.
That's how you dominate a series physically.
That's how Kachuk should have played.
100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I like that.
It was probably the single most important series from an
Performance.
individual player in franchise history.
Really?
I'm gonna say it.
On top of Kiprusoff?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
fair enough.
Kiprusoff was amazing, and I will never take anything away from him. But that team also had the Eliminator, also had Aginla,
Jerome. Yeah.
also had Conroy coming in at key points, Salius. Like there was a lot of reasons for the goals that were scored, but we don't win that series against Vancouver without Berlin doing what he did. Because he took away their defense altogether by himself. They were afraid to be in the corners.
Freaking Ferkland or whatever his name is.
Yeah, never heard of him. Yeah, bullshit.
Well, you sure fucking have now.
Yeah, he knows about him now. Yeah.
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 I like that. No, that's a good way to top off that little, well, I guess long segment of top five moments.
Just so everybody knows, when Dylan and I get together before we hit record on this thing, we have a quick combo about what we're going to talk about, sort of.
Every episode's supposed to be 45 minutes.
Yeah, and we're like, yeah, we'll do like 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here, and then we'll move on to another subject, which is what we're about to do an hour later.
No. Okay, well, let's move on to a little New Year's wish list of things that we'd like to see the Flames do, or a player do, or Tree Living do, or something. We're gonna do top three. For the new year. You start.
I start.
Yeah.
All right. My first one. I want to see Mangiapane play less.
Okay.
Sorry. Let me rephrase that. That came out wrong. I want to see one full game where Mangiapane is able to stay on his feet and not get pushed around. And if he's unable to do that, I would like for him to watch a game or two from the press box so he can see how professional players do so.
Start with Dubé, who used to have that problem and no longer does.
You know what? He turned his life around, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
He's on the first line now because of it.
So I have quite a few things on my list, and Mangiapane, I'm not going to put it on my list because you put it on your list, but it was definitely in contention for top three.
It's on your thought list. I know that for sure.
I do talk about it a lot. And I just want to change the way that you put that a little bit.
Okay.
I want to see something happen with Mangiapane. I want to see either him play very well, or him sit in the press box, or a trade, or something. Something's got to give with this player, because he's been literally our worst player all season long, not all year long. We're not talking about 2022, but he's been our worst player, period, all season long, in my opinion. And that includes Markstrom's horrible start. That includes Lucic getting sat. That includes everything. That includes
Rooney being sent down to the minors.
What's that?
Rooney being sent down to the minors.
Yeah, that includes that.
I agree. I 100% accept your rewording.
Yeah. So whether it's a trade, whether it's a couple games in the box, the press box, whether it's him finishing, because that's all he has in his career is the ability to finish, and he hasn't done it at all this year. Something's got to give.
Yeah.
And that's a negative thing to start off with, but I agree.
Well, that's why you start with the negative and then you just progress into the positive. What's your number three?
Well, my it's hard because we didn't talk about which ones we were all going to say, and I have, like I said, a few things here, but I'm going to say capitalize, and this is going to be negative too, probably, but capitalize on Matthew Phillips' current trade value,
Okay.
however much there might be.
Hmm.
Um, he very well could thrive in another system. He doesn't fit our current team, our current coach, our current system.
Well, he fits our system because our AHL affiliate, being the Wranglers,
Yeah,
are supposed to be playing a mirror image of that system.
mm-hmm. And they play quite similar.
And he seems to fit that system very well.
I would argue that well, I guess it's not argue, it's agree, but I think he does fit that system very well. But it's also because the competition is vastly inferior.
Are you breaking new ground here?
I don't know, but I
Holy
like
shit!
that expression on your face.
The AHL is not as good as the NHL.
It's vastly inferior, actually, Chris.
Holy shit! You know what? I always thought that if you ripped it up in the A, it was natural that you'd rip it up in the N.
Well,
I can't believe I'm learning this now.
I know, right? And like that's not to say that he might not thrive in another system or something like that, but
agreed.
Where we are now, the fact that he is likely not going to resign. I mean, we don't know that. Maybe he's okay with being an AHL player as long as that AHL is the team is in his hometown.
Sure,
but
I doubt it though.
Oh, me too. I think he'd much rather have a chance at an NHL job, which I don't really think he's going to get here.
I don't think he'll get here either. There's a clear disconnect between player and coach in our system or in their city now. He's finally made the roster or the cut as far as in the call up. Played 2 games, looked not good. Had 1 shot on goal in 2 games. Like
when you're trying to pop offensively, I don't care how much time on ice. People say he got 5 minutes in one game, but like if you look at the game sheet, he got almost 9.
Yeah, he was 9 and just
18 minutes in 2 games.
Yeah, like that's more than 5, and he was in a third line role. How many minutes do you want him to have?
And like I apologize, actually I don't, but when you're trying to pop offensively as a player who who should have an extraordinary amount of offensive confidence, considering he was at the time the top scorer in the AHL, you'd figure that popping 1 shot off in 18 minutes of game time, you'd figure you'd be trying more when you're trying to pop off offensively, and it didn't happen.
No.
He didn't look. I mean, I don't think he looked horrible, but I don't think he looked good. And when you're that size, I know you say this a lot, but when you're that size, in order to make the NHL and stay there, you have to pop way more than somebody bigger than you does.
That's right. Yeah, you have to be noticed, right? The way a 6 foot or 6'2" defender gets noticed in their call up is they fight somebody,
or they don't
find a way.
Noticed.
Yeah, they find a way to make their name be written on the game sheet.
Miss Gilbert,
right?
Yeah,
like he will absolutely, in my opinion, make the team as a full timer next year.
Yep,
based on his performance. Yeah, based on his performance,
7th, probably 7th.
Sure, but he will be with the team in the entire season, I believe.
Agree.
right? Like he catapulted himself above Mackey in the depth charts, right?
Mhm.
He had
And at times
three
Stone.
fights in 3 games, and like there
Mhm.
and his defensive game was actually pretty solid.
I didn't have any problems with it,
No,
unlike Mackey's.
that's right. Where he's had a number of bad games this year.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Um,
if you're Matthew Phillips and you want to become an NHLer, you need to prove that you deserve to be an NHLer. It's not up to
and
the
this
system or the coach to give you the minutes. You go
no,
out and get those goddamn minutes.
his AHL game, as far as I am aware and have seen,
Mhm.
is very reminiscent of Kadri,
Sure.
except for he's not a center. He's the type of guy who should be playing in front of the net, who should be wrestling in front of the net, which doesn't really work for a guy that size at the NHL level. But
No,
um,
no.
but that's how he's successful in the AHL. And
It's
he didn't even try to do that.
no, he didn't. Well, in his defense, I suppose it's probably tough for a player like Matthew Phillips to screen a goalie that's 6'4".
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that style of play, unfortunately, just
Jake Allen's not 6'4", though.
it's true. It's true.
And Montreal's not good,
But Phillips is still not
even though they
screening
beat
him,
us.
right? Because he's
Yeah.
thin as well.
Yeah.
No, you need to get there on the points. Players like
Or more than one shot, or
that's right,
just good
or
chances.
or be able to set up a play or have good vision of the ice where where things are happening around you or because of you.
The only thing that popped for me in both of his games was one giveaway. It's the only thing that I really would have noticed from him
Yeah.
if we weren't all like trying to watch him, if I was just watching a regular game. That would have been the only thing I noticed from him was one giveaway. I believe it was on the power play
Yeah.
at the blue line.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Power play too. They tried to give him right. They gave him the opportunity.
Yep.
So, yep. No, I agree.
Okay, what's your number two?
My number two, which, ooh, my number two is to have the ability to continue with stable lines now that we're halfway through the season or coming up to the halfway mark of the season. I think it's very important that the Flames, barring maybe a shuffle during the game because something's not happening and the coach is getting irritated, but I think we need to have our line set. But I believe that's going to only happen truly based on what I believe both of our number ones are going to be. But I think that having our four lines set is going to be very key moving into the playoff situation.
Into the playoff race, even.
Yeah.
I agree. And that's
for consistency, right?
yeah. And that
obviously you're going to have flexibility, depending on if a player is having a rough couple of games. Yes, you move a player back and forth, but so far this season, we've seen a lot of different lines. And granted, I'm not putting that on Sutter because he's had a completely different looking team to have to figure out who's going to play well with each other and things like that. So like, I'm not putting that on Sutter. I just think that now that we're coming up to the halfway point, we need to start having defined lines so is that we can have
not define line numbers, but define personnel on the lines.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm not numbering any of that.
Yeah.
But just having defined players that play together. So is that moving into the playoff situation or potentially becoming a playoff team, they know what they're doing together. So is that when it comes to games that matter in the the tail end of March through April and hopefully beyond, these players do well together.
So this kind of rolls into my what I had as my top one, but I'll move it down to two just because that's where we are. Which is I think what we have is, as the top six is currently unsustainable.
Mhm.
I think it's great that it's working currently, but I think it's unsustainable. And my number one was, but it's actually going to be my number two now, is we need a top line winger, or at least a top
And
six winger.
that's why I said that all that is contingent on what I thought both of us had picked as the number one in this conversation. So I agree with you.
Was
Unfortunately,
that your number one?
that was my number one, or still is my number one. But
Okay.
but I think that one player is, if we know where that one player is going to be, right? That one player, if we're bringing in a top line right winger, they better be on the top line. So the other three lines can absolutely be set.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. I think that I think it's very sustainable to have Dylan Dubé in the top six. I don't think it's super sustainable to have Dylan Dubé playing top line minutes.
Agreed. Yeah.
Um
Yeah, I agree 100%.
I really like him, but I don't think he's ready for that, especially in playoffs. And I don't think that
I think it
I
would be
love
unfair for Dylan.
Milan Lucic as a player, and I love what he brings to the team, but it's just having him play top 6 minutes is insanely unsustainable to me.
You can't say that he's playing top 6 minutes because he's never been on the top line.
Well,
So
it's top six though. It's he's playing quote unquote second line minutes right now, which is top six.
yeah, most people call that middle six, right? Because you only get to be top six if you actually flirt with the number one.
Fair
Right.
enough. But I
Which
think
he's not going
much,
to. But
yeah, I think
okay,
he's much better suited as a third, fourth liner, which is
agreed.
fine, right? Like we need those two, and
Agreed. I
his game lends itself to that. And don't get me wrong, his game is lending itself really good to helping Huberdeau and Kadri create space for Huberdeau and Kadri and screen goalies for those two.
I
And
I think that's a very key component. Exactly what you just described is having a player on a second line that has the ability to create space.
mhm,
Currently on our roster, we don't really have anybody. Not saying, and I'm not saying Luch deserves to should be on the second line, quote unquote.
again, we just have
Um,
nobody. It's the same with Toffoli being on the first line. We just
that's right.
don't have anyone better currently.
That's right. But that being said, Dubé does have that ability to, drop in,
Draw
right, get into
draw
that,
defenders towards him.
draw defenders towards him, and be somewhat physical in the corners to where you can at least hold somebody off for 1 second, 2 seconds, so as that a play can develop elsewhere.
Yeah.
Um, I honestly don't think that Luch is going to even end January in that line. I really don't.
Mhm.
I think that has given Huberdeau a really good opportunity to become familiar and happy with the system and happy with who he is as an offensive player,
Mhm.
because it's given him some space. And I do like the pairing of him and Kadri, because they do actually seem to fit quite well. Because Huberdeau can skate around and do his thing, and if he can get into the mindset of just getting the puck towards the net, Kadri can be a very effective person in front of the net to pick up either rebounds or a screen or whatever the case may be, to really get Huberdeau to that next level as far as goals, because he's
Mhm.
got a hell of a shot and
He
he
does.
needs to shoot more. And he knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows that. And even he said the other night in interview that he feels like he needs to go to a psychiatrist so as that he can get that pass
I mean,
first
he was obviously
mentality out of it.
joking, but
Of course he was,
yeah.
but I'm not.
But it's also a
It's
lot
a
of
thing.
truth is said in jest.
That's right.
Yeah.
He has a brilliant shot, and he needs to utilize that more. And don't get me wrong, I love his ability to create a play, and his passes are elite.
Well, especially
But
especially because having a goalie and other players respect the shot opens up more
that's exactly what I
playmaking
was going to
looks.
say. That's
Mhm.
exactly what I was going to say. You
Yeah.
imagine how much ice that opens up when the goalie doesn't know if you're going to shoot or pass, and
That's why
if
Johnny
they're both
Gaudreau
dangerous,
helped. What's that?
and if they're both dangerous, that's it's a great problem to have.
Exactly. That's why we had three guys with 40 goals, is because people had to start respecting Johnny Gaudreau's shot for the first time
Yep,
in his career.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. But
Um,
like I said, I don't think that Luch is going to end this month in the position that he's in. But for the time being, it's not even for me. It's not even. It's the best option we have. I feel like he's playing at a level right now where he deserves that time.
well, he's currently like, and I don't mean currently as the team is constructed. I mean currently as in like this week,
Yeah.
our best option for that.
Right.
Um, yeah, no, I agree with that. Um, what's what's a couple of players that you would be looking for I'm guessing you probably want a right winger, would be my guess.
That would be my ideal position. Yep.
Okay, ignoring just for fun, ignoring salary cap implications and stuff like that, and trade costs. Just knowing kind of who might be on the block and stuff like that. Who would be a couple players you'd be pretty pumped if the Flames made a trade for?
Well, up until like up until this morning when we find out that Tarasenko is going on injury again,
4 weeks, I think 3-4 weeks. Yeah,
he was very high on that list.
he was
Now,
for me too.
I don't think that necessarily means that he's not as good going into a playoff situation because that's obviously a couple months away.
Mhm.
But potentially that might bring down his trade value.
Which could help actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It might actually get us into a situation where you can just go player for player, right?
are you talking about Andrew?
I mean, if it's Andrew is going to be, it'll likely be player and a prospect or player and a second or third in
Yeah.
2024. But
What player are you thinking of?
it would likely be Andrew in my mind
Yeah.
because for me that's really the only hole that we have offensively is getting rid of the worst player on the team so far this year, bringing in a true number one. Then you can get those lines solidified, and life,
Mhm.
in my opinion, is looking pretty good.
Absolutely. Um,
Or a Kyrou
Tarasenko has
or
spent most of the season as the top player on my list
yeah,
of players that I want, but he's also been high on my list for a couple of years.
yeah,
Um, so I can agree with you on that. The injury is a little scary, but
it is
actually, um,
because
somebody passed him on my list recently. What's that?
he's had a lot of injuries over the last couple of years, which is kind of scary, right?
He played pretty much all season last season, and I think he got 38 goals.
Mm-hmm.
But you are correct. He so
Yeah,
he had
last
a
3 years
surgery.
he's had a lot of injury.
Yes, and coming off of 2 years ago, right before he played that almost that whole season
Mm-hmm.
and got 38 goals. I think I'd have to look it up, but it's something close to that.
Yeah.
He had surgery that he's been trying to have. It was almost a low key kind of a Jack Eichel situation where the team didn't want him to have a certain surgery that he wanted, and then finally they let him, and then he came back and played pretty much the whole season and played really fucking well.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, he's injured now. I don't know what the injury is. I haven't looked it up, but I don't know if it's still the same shoulder. But um,
Hopefully
either
not.
way, it's
Hopefully
a
not,
scary
because that
thing.
would be a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Um, but yeah, so that's, I mean, so we agree on that one. Um, Anybody else you're thinking of?
No, you go. Who's your guy?
So the player who's past Tarasenko, I think maybe about the same as Tarasenko on my list. And I don't really know if he's available, but I feel like Philly is going to be rebuilding, even though they seem to fucking refuse to. They're
Are they the Calgary Flames?
horrible. Well, yeah, except the Calgary Flames have never been that bad.
Sure.
They're always in the middle of the pack.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You said you were born in '89, so you didn't get to actually live through the late, like mid '90s to early 2000 as a
Um,
Flames fan,
yeah, I mean,
where
I
where we
lived through
also
it, but I
didn't
wasn't
rebuild.
alive enough to. No, I wasn't coherent enough to pay attention to that type of
No,
stuff.
I agree with your first comment. Actually, like, you're not truly alive enough until you've become a Flames fan.
Well, I was a Flames fan that whole time, but anyways, um,
Sure.
Travis Konechny, I
Uh-huh.
think is a great shout. He's got 18 goals on the year, in 35 games. He's got 38 points playing on just a horrible team where his center is Kevin Hayes, and I don't even know who his winger is because Cam Atkinson is injured. So it just makes sense to me. I know he's only 25, um, but it just makes sense to me for us to get him.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I
Pretty
can.
much exactly what we're looking for. And from what I know of him, he's quite a forechecker and a physical player that can put the puck in the net. And he's younger, under contract. I know I said not to think about contracts and money and stuff, but
No, I mean, he checks all the boxes, right? He's gritty. He's a scorer, even though he's playing with players that aren't, necessarily elite.
he's over a point per game.
That's right. Put him with a Huberdeau. You imagine what he could possibly do if he can retrieve that pass, right? That's one of the things that's been an issue with Huberdeau in that pass. But you're right. Like, his contract is what, good till 2025, I think it
Yep.
is, right?
Yep.
He's got all the production. The only if for me is, is Philly willing to part ways with him?
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, if I'm Philly, I'm building around that.
Me too. But I mean, if I'm Chicago, I'm building around the Brinket.
Fair enough.
Um, Same age, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, but also if I'm Philly and I'm serious about the Bedard thing, maybe getting rid of a over point per game player
It would help.
might help.
It would help. And yeah,
But with Tortorella at the helm, not that he makes the decisions as far as
Tortorella is not giving up, right? Like, he's
no.
not willing to part ways with anything that
Mm-hmm.
will lose games and cause him frustrations in a press conference.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as the rest of the league is concerned, I think that's a good thing because Mad Tortorella is fucking hilarious. But
Yeah. 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 I mean, a happy Tortorella is fun to watch. A mad Tortorella is amazing.
mhm. um, the only other player I really have on my list because I'm not a big fan of Patrick Kane. But the only other player I have on my list is Timo Meyer, and um,
Yeah,
the
I can see
money
that.
scares the fucking living bejesus out of me.
That's
But
me.
as a
Yeah.
player, fuck yeah,
As a player,
it's exactly
100%.
what we need.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The contract, no. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah,
That's that's
it's the qualifying offer at 10 million.
yeah.
But as if it were more of a rental type of a thing, and then you qualify them and trade them, I wouldn't mind. But um,
Yeah, for so
it
for
scares me
me,
a little too much.
so for me, being a rental, that price tag has got to be low. It
Well,
has to be.
Tarasenko would be a rental too, and Konechny wouldn't, so it might be
Yeah.
higher. But yeah, nope,
Yep.
I
I
agree.
agree.
Um, so I know we kind of just messed with our top two. No, your top two and my top one were kind of all the same.
Yep.
Um,
So they all meld in together. That means
they
we're on the
they all
same
melded
page,
together.
and it's clear that the Calgary Flames have what a lot of fans are talking about as the same needs, right?
Yeah, a lot of fans are starting to think a defenseman is what we need, but I kind of don't agree.
I
I
don't
think that
I don't agree with that at all. I think defensively we're
okay,
fairly solid.
yeah,
Like we're not great, but it's not a problem.
yeah. So one thing I wanted to say too, I guess my which would have been my second on my wish list is really my first on the wish list is a playoff run and make it further than the fucking Oilers.
I don't give a shit about making it further than the Oilers. I just want to make it out of the second round. I base zero opinion
Well,
on
I
the
say
Oilers.
that based
Yeah.
on the thought that we're probably either facing them in the first or second round if
I
both
don't
teams make it.
I don't think they're making the playoffs. Um I Yeah, I mean I understand the do better than the Oiler mindset. I do get it. And I understand what you're saying that it's likely because we're going to play them in at least one or two rounds. But yeah, I would never use those words, though
Yeah,
I understand why you did.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
But
think
yes,
that's pretty much. I mean, everybody wants to go on a long run, right? Um, so I
yeah,
think that's
I
that's
I
what we
didn't
did.
I didn't say that as something on my list because it's always something on my list.
Oh yeah, no, it's not a this year
I want
thing.
to
It's an always
play
thing.
in the conference finals or better
Every
every year.
yeah. Could you imagine?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. We're not Tampa.
no. Um, and I kind of wanted to say too, like I know this isn't on my top three list because it doesn't really matter what the fans think as far as what the on ice product is, but um, I'd like the fans to like realize, like see the parallels between what happened with some of our old stars and their first 30-35 games with this coach in the system and some of our new stars and their first 30-35 games um in with the coach in the system.
Mhm.
I'd like for a lot of the fans to shut the fuck up about Huberto not producing because he's been absolutely fantastic for the last now save probably two games. I think he's been fantastic for the last over month,
Mhm.
over a month, and
Yeah. Did he have a rough start? You know, the
absolutely,
first month? Sure. Of course he did.
yeah.
I don't think there's a person on the planet that wouldn't have a rough start when you're coming from the different situations.
Well, your entire life got shaken up.
Your entire life got shaken up. Your entire way of playing hockey for the last decade got shaken up. Like
Mhm.
there's multiple reasons for him to have a struggling start, and it all makes sense.
Mhm.
And since then, he's looked great.
He has, and
Yeah.
like even when he's not playing offense or with the puck, like his defensive play is just like our old stars from last year.
Mhm.
Their defensive play got better before their offensive play came to fruition. That's what happened with Hubert. Like
That's
if you
literally
look at
that's
the
literally
last
Daryl's
game,
system.
exactly. You look at the last game, Huberto made what could arguably be a game-saving play by keeping a guy from shooting the puck because he was in the blocking position. And then Huberto fell down. So the guy went around him, or
Mhm.
sorry, the guy passed the puck, got the puck back, and Huberto swatted it away and down the ice
Yep.
from his knees. And
Same.
that's something you would never, ever see him do in Florida. Be happy.
Absolutely. And same with the goal saving pass that Uyghur interrupted, stopped on his stick because it was coming across the crease, going to, was it Lazar? right?
I can't remember, but I know what you're talking about.
It was pretty much an easy tap in or off the skate that we were just literally just dead in its track, stop the pass, and up the ice we went.
Yeah.
Like it's very simple to see the tangible results of a Sutter style.
Mhm.
And I mean, I get it. Everybody wants to see more production, but you can't get the production until you learn how to get the puck and keep the puck and move forward with it.
Yeah.
Right. You have to learn it from this end to be able to have success at the other end. You
Right.
have to. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, the fan base needs to understand that, yes, because we lost, two of our top line players, when you bring in another player, a player to fill in that gap, they're not going to start off hot. That's not how that works. It's never ever how it works. No matter.
And like people try and draw the comparison with how good Kachuk's doing, but Kachuk wanted that trade. He asked for that trade. He orchestrated the trade.
He wanted that trade, and he started the season very well, but he's looked like shit in the last 8-9 games.
Yep.
He has not looked good.
Hasn't been great.
Right. And Johnny, okay, has he produced points? Sure.
His
They're in
team's
the last place team in the fucking league. Like, who gives a shit?
Yeah. Although
it feels
I could
like
be pretty
Matthew
excited
Phillips.
to see a Bedard Gaudreau line next year. I could be pretty excited to see that.
I'm not going to be excited to see it because I won't watch it. I don't care what Columbus does. I truly don't.
Fair enough.
Because I don't like, even if they
I watch games of every team.
Even if next year Bedard's on the team, they look great to get him into the playoffs. They're not going to go anywhere.
Oh no,
because Laine's not a playoff player. Bedard's a child, and Gaudreau is not going to have a team to really get him in there. They don't have goaltending. They don't have anything else to offer. Sure,
I think it's exciting to watch good hockey.
Yeah,
I watch games of every team. So
yeah, those would be the nights where I got nothing else to watch. So you put on the Blue Jackets. Ah, shit, they're playing the Coyote. And they're playing the fucking Phoenix. God damn it. Whatever. What else? I guess I'll watch it. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, damn it. They're playing Minnesota.
Well, it was
I like Minnesota.
Laundry type of games.
Yeah. But yeah, no, you're right. The fan base needs to knock it off and just give them a chance to gel and play the system. Yes, we're over 30, almost 40 games into the season,
but he's started all that already.
I was going to say, but it's been happening for a month and a half. It's been
happening for 12, 15 games. Like,
yeah, it's been happening. Like, he's just he's shy of a point per game as it is right now.
Yeah.
So, he's got last show we did, I think he had 6 points in 5 games. I think now he has 7 or 8 in 6. So
he's got 8 and 10, I think.
Yeah.
But because he didn't get any last game.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. He did. What a bum.
Right. But anyways, I think that should pretty much do it. Make sure you like and subscribe, comment on the video if you have anything to say. If you have any awesome moments of the year that we missed, or if you have anything on your wish list that we don't have on ours, let us know in the comments. Like I said, like and subscribe. Check out the Hockey Podcast Network on Spotify, Apple Podcast, whatever. They have shows about every team, and make sure you share us with your friends and let your friends know about us.
Agreed. And I'm also kind of on the fence on whether or not want to start doing, simple merchandise things like, Armchair GM Podcast hats or Armchair GM Podcast shirts, different designs. Obviously, the designs can be figured out, but throw comments in there if you're interested in something like that, and I will look into it further.
Yeah, we would definitely, if we thought it would sell, if we thought we could get some advertising out of it, we'd love to.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. That being said, welcome to 2023, all you lovely Flames fans.
Go Blast to go.
Let's go to the playoffs. Fuck off with your blast. Cheers.
Cheers.